do. Welcome, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural State of the University Address here at Concordia University of Edmonton. My name is Valerie Hennetuk. I am the Vice President, Academic and Provost, and I have the honor of being your MC today. Now, the timing for this event is very tight, so my opening remarks will be brief. And first, I'd just like to make a couple of announcements. The first announcement is there is a class in this auditorium at 1 o'clock, so I will thank everybody in advance for their cooperation in vacating the auditorium at the end of the event. Second, the event is being live streamed, so I'd advise everybody to govern themselves accordingly. And certainly if you have your phone with you, any devices, make sure they're on silent for us. That'd be really, really welcome. Thank you. Thirdly, all students should have been entered in the draw as they were coming in, and I'll just let you know that there will be a general email announcement of the winners very shortly. And finally, following today's address, there will be a Q&A session. Now, if in the interest of time we don't manage to get to your question, please do not despair. Simply email that question to president@concordia.ab.ca, or do what I do and simply accost him in the hallways. He's very happy to have any feedback and dialogue with all members of the community. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our President and Vice Chancellor as of January of this year. Tim Lorman joined CUE in 2003 following a PhD from the Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. You may have noticed he talks a little funny. That would explain it. He's held many very different roles here at CUE, from Professor of Education to Vice President Academic. His impressive list of publications is much too long for me to recite here, so I won't try to do so. But I'll just flag up a couple of his very important books. They have titles such as Love as Pedagogy from 2011, Cultures of Educational Policy from 2012, and most recently, Inclusive Pedagogy Across the Curriculum, 2017. Among the honors Tim has received are numerous fellowships and visiting professorships from Italy to Northern Ireland, along with Concordia's own President's Research Award just last year. And I will underscore, he didn't give that to himself. That was the previous president giving it to him. I just realized I needed to clarify that. In any case, as I said, my remarks are brief, so I will ask you at this moment to please join with me in warmly welcoming your president and mine, Dr. Tim Lorman.
Well, thank you, Valerie, for the warm welcome, and I see the front row is empty, so it feels just like I'm teaching a class. Seems to be the norm here. Thank you all for coming to Concordia's first ever State of the University Address. I'd like to start by acknowledging that the territory that we're on is Treaty 6 land and the traditional home of the Métis people. I'd also like to welcome the people here joining us on the interwebs there. The purpose of this address is to provide context for our community, and this commitment to transparency and information sharing, I believe, will get us off to the right start as we embark on what looks to be a fantastic new academic year. And at the outset, I'd like to acknowledge the work of our vice presidents, our registrar, and others who helped me to put this address together, and especially people such as Danielle Charlene, Judy Cruzy, Dante, Tom, Lana, everyone who helped with the sort of nuts and bolts of today's presentation. Thank you very much. We work as a team, and this address is very much a collaborative effort, so thank you. I'd also like to apologise to the important areas of our institution that I'm not going to mention this afternoon, and this is simply a function of the limited time we have. I'd also like to now recognise some of our VIPs and special guests here. We have Mr. Kerry Diott, who is and now hold your applause until I've sort of said all the names here, and I know that people will still clap, but don't. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Kerry Diott, who is the Member of Parliament for this area and for Edmonton Griesbach, and is a very strong supporter of Concordia. Thank you, Kerry, for being here today. I'd like to welcome our past Chancellor, the Honorary Judge Alan Wakowicz, who's here. Thank you very much for coming. Our incoming Chancellor, Mr. Stephen Mandel, who's joining us today. Thank you, Stephen. From our Board of Governors, we have our Board Chair, Mr. Mike Wade. We have Mr. Ed Boras. We have Dr. Jonathan Strand. We have Mr. Brandon Vollweiter. And we also have joining us today a recently past board member, not passed away, but past board member, Mr. Merv Fingers. So please make them feel very welcome here today. Concordia has changed a lot over the past three years especially. And yet our mission and vision continue to guide our work. One way of looking at our mission and vision is that it challenges us to become Canada's preeminent small university. And the trajectory we are on puts that within reach. Our student enrolment this semester is the highest it has ever been. Last I heard, it was around 2,050 students. We are much more inclusive and welcoming than we have ever been, and we are well managed even as we currently feel some pressures. The stage is set for enhancements to our research work, our international relationships have taken shape and are demonstrating concrete results, and we have established ourselves as Edmonton's university. I look forward to our next steps. With that in mind, and as a means of introduction, I'd like to begin with a quick look at those who are the most important to us, our students. What do they think of Concordia? Well, data from the Canadian University Survey Consortium's 2017 survey is very flattering in that regard. We outdo the Canadian average on most measures, and our results for 2017 are very similar compared to past years. Here are just a few. This slide tells us that 89% of students in their middle years at Concordia think that the university experience here meets or exceeds expectations, well above the national average. This slide shows very high levels of satisfaction with the teaching here at Concordia, and particularly in the strongly agree category. This slide is the final piece that I'll share from the CUSC survey, although there is considerably more positive data in the full results. As you can see, our students are very satisfied with their decision to come here. As I said, this is just a little bit of information to get us started, but what this shows is that from the student perspective, we are doing very well. Of course, these pleasing outcomes don't happen by themselves. They're the result of many areas of our institution working together with a common purpose. And one of these areas is our Board of Governors. The relationship between the President and the Board, and particularly the President and the Board Chair, is critical to the proper functioning of our institution. And I'm pleased to report that my relationship with Concordia's Board of Governors is positive, productive, professional, and based on mutual respect for one another and our different roles and responsibilities. I've developed a strong relationship with our Board Chair, Mr. Mike Wade, who's here today. We are in close and regular contact with friendly, open, and honest lines of communication. The Board-President relationship at Concordia is in great shape. Our board structure and processes were last reviewed in 2009. If you think that's funny, you wait and see what's to come. We felt that it was time for an updated review, and so we commissioned a third-party review of Concordia's board governance, conducted by Field Law over the summer. This review found that there are no significant issues with how our board functions. However, at the same time, they presented a number of recommendations for improvement that will be discussed and perhaps implemented by the board over the next year. The board is ensuring that its committee and executive structures are the most effective that they can possibly be. The main issue facing the board in the coming year is resolving what has become known as the public-private issue. Concordia is currently in the independent academic institution sector. but with the authority of the board, I've been working with the Government of Alberta to explore what a change in status to a public institution might look like, and Mike Wade has been joining me in those conversations. There are a number of potential advantages to us becoming public. We would have access to Government of Alberta capital grants and loans, our reputation might be enhanced, and our long-term sustainability would likely be improved. Now to academics. With thanks to our Vice President Academic and Provost, who you just heard from, Dr. Valerie Henachek, for providing me with information in this area. Our current academic plan expires in 2018, and we need to start developing a new one now. To assist with this, we've contracted Todd Babiak, this is Todd, and Sean Ola of Story Engine, a company that takes a unique, innovative approach to strategic planning. And this will help us achieve a dynamic, inspiring plan for this exciting and critical moment in Concordia's history. The narrative approach will ensure that every member of our campus community can see themselves in the new academic plan. On June the 5th, our General Faculties Council, or GFC, voted to discontinue the Concordia Core and endorse the Learning Outcomes Implementation Guide. Up to this point, we have required students to take a set of courses in addition to their program requirements in order to get a Concordia degree. The idea was that this would produce a distinctive Concordia education. It did not. So we've decided to no longer require that of students, and instead are creating institutional learning outcomes. Students, of course, still need to meet the specific requirements of their program, but they are being provided with greater choice in terms of what courses they take outside of that. This is a great step forward for our university, making us more responsive to student interest and more attractive to potential students. With the creation of our new Indigenous Student Council this past spring, and the pending inauguration of an Elders Council this fall, and our Indigenous Knowledge and Research Centre in April of 2018, Concordia underscores its commitment to responding in concrete ways to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC. All of our faculties are doing something in this area, from research projects to challenging one another to include Indigenous content in courses, to direct work in Indigenous communities. Our response to the TRC shows genuine commitment and sincerity. I'm concerned with making us a more welcoming place for Indigenous learners, where they can feel comfortable, included, and can experience true success. I want us to be truly engaged with Indigenous communities and see real reforms in our curriculum and pedagogy. It is good if people know what we are doing, but we shan't be bragging about what we should have been doing all along. I'll now turn to the status of our new programs here at Concordia. As you can see in this table, we have a Master of Education and our first doctoral level degree in psychology in various levels of review. I hope that we'll be ready to start both in the fall of 2018, but doing so depends on the pace of review, which is external and more or less out of our control. Our Bachelor of Science in Information Technology is an exciting prospect and one that I hope will find connections to our graduate MISM and MISAM programs and faculty. Similarly, our Certificate in Occupational Health and Safety has the potential to provide us with opportunities to give many more students the Concordia experience, and is the result of us being approached by OH&S industry partners. Now, unfortunately, despite the hard work of various people at Concordia on this file over a number of years, it is highly unlikely that our proposed optometry program will proceed further. A negative internal feasibility study combined with a lack of meaningful commitment from the Alberta Association of Optometrists and the Alberta College of Optometrists has meant that the risks of moving any further ahead are likely too great. I'll now turn to our enrolment picture, and I thank our registrar, Dr. Andreas Gulzo, for preparing this information. Over the past few years, Concordia University of Edmonton's overall enrolment has seen a steady increase, as shown in this slide. Learner and Enrolment Reporting System, or LERS numbers, are the enrolment numbers that we report to the province. They do not include enrolment in any certificate or diploma programs, but only approved degree programs. The 2017-18 value is the registrar's current prediction. Within the Alberta post-secondary system, Concordia University of Edmonton has slowly increased its market share. This slide shows the full load equivalent, or FLE, enrolment changes as a percentage change between 2012-13 and now. Note that we've increased our share of students, not only relative to other independent academic institutions, but also relative to the system overall. Our first degree undergraduate programs have been primarily responsible for the significant increase in enrolment over the past 5 years, because of enrolment in our 4-year arts and science degrees, which has skyrocketed. As you can see here, however, the growth in arts is mainly due to our psychology program. Similarly, the increase in the Bachelor of Science program enrolment is due to increases in the biology and environmental science majors. It appears that increases in the psychology, biology, and environmental science majors will continue in the coming year. I'll now address our institutional financial picture from a very high level, with thanks to our VP Financial and Operations, Mr. Richard Curry, and Financial Administrator Mimi Kanjaza for their support with the information here. But before I talk about our financial situation, I need to put it into context. There is modest recovery in the Alberta economy as we emerge from the recession, with 3.2% growth for the 27-18 budget year being predicted by ATB. However, we are still not at pre-recession levels, and the provincial government continues to face a mounting budget deficit as oil prices linger below $50 per barrel. As the deficit accumulates, there is concern about the capacity of the government to support us into the future. In 2016-17, we saw our revenues here at Concordia grow by approximately $2.5 million, driven largely by increasing enrolment and not increases in fees and tuition, as these were largely frozen. Tuition represented 48.7% of all revenue. Government operating funding also increased by 2%. Funding from the provincial government continues to form a significant proportion of total revenue. Notice, however, that our revenue is drawn almost entirely from two sources: tuition and government funding. We need to find new revenue streams, and grants, particularly research grants, are one area in which we need to see a significant improvement. Our fundraising efforts also need to improve. Both of these areas have been weak for many years, and an improvement would be helpful for our overall institutional financial health. In addition, programs and courses with small enrolment numbers need to attract more students if they are to justify the resources devoted to them. Our total expenses for 2016-17 were $28.8 million, an increase of 6% over 2015-16. Salary and benefits accounted for 67.7% of all operational expenses. Increases in salary and wages were driven by both increases in staffing and increases in compensation. A total of 9 full-time faculty and instructional positions were added, in addition to 7.5 support staff positions in 2016-17, at a total cost of $1.35 million for this financial year. Now, Concordia ended the 2016-17 financial fiscal year with an operating surplus of $2.8 million. However, $1.1 million of this was because the value of our pension plan, our defined benefit pension plan, increased more than expected, which of course is not money that we can access. The real surplus then, the money that we can actually use, is $1.7 million. However, allow me to clear up a potential misconception. And this misconception occurs when people use the words like surplus. An operating surplus does not mean that Concordia has in any way more money than it needs. Concordia must run an annual surplus in order to ensure ongoing financial health. The directive of our Board of Governors is that surplus operating funds are to be applied to capital projects because, as an independent academic institution, we do not receive support for such projects from the Government of Alberta. Our new Centre for Science, Research and Innovation is one example of a capital project to which surplus funds have been applied. There are many other things that can be said about our financial health at Concordia. Our finance office has been examining trends in our longer-term financial position through what are known as ratio tables. This level of detail is too great for my presentation today, but some information on these, although not the actual tables because they contain information that we may not yet share, is included in the written booklet that will be available at the conclusion of this address. And that will be also posted on the Concordia website, especially for those joining us on the webcast. In short, what you'll find is that on most measures of financial health, we do very well, although we do need to be very cautious about taking on further long-term debt. Now, our first quarter of the 2017-18 financial year, so I've spoken about last year. As for this year so far, the first quarter reflected a number of unanticipated expenses, combined with slightly softer than anticipated enrolment figures. This resulted in a revised forecast of a deficit for 2017-18, and we face the potential for a much more substantial deficit if something is not done. In response, our VP Finance and Operations has been putting together a revised budget, which we are calling Budget 2.0. We're going to realign our budget through a temporary freeze on hires and unbudgeted expenses, along with postponing some projects. This is the prudent thing to do and will ensure our financial health throughout the budget year. And I must highlight once again that these measures are temporary and will be lifted once we get a handle on the budget. I want to now turn to student life and learning. Concordia's Student Life and Learning team, led by Vice President Dr. Barbara Van Ingen, who provided this information, supports students from orientation through to graduation and beyond as alumni. A very exciting new development is our Student Success Centre, which will open this November. Concordia has excellent student services, but these services are located in various buildings across campus, perhaps resulting in barriers for students. To better assist with the complex needs of students, most of the student service functions will now share space in the Student Success Centre, or formerly known as the Welcome Centre. This integrated student support experience is designed to be a one-stop, multimodal support service for Concordia's learners, improving the consistency of service and the student experience. Our Career Services Office is moving into this new Student Success Centre and is a central element of it. We know an education at Concordia opens multiple doors, and that is supported by the work of the Career Services Office. I want to enhance our emphasis on career services for our students, which explains its new central location on campus. Are there any student athletes here today? Not a single student athlete? Oh, there we go, yes. Oh, okay. Well, you're a part of a very successful department, because our athletics department is also administered by Student Life and Learning, and we're coming off the back of a banner year in athletics. The 2016-17 athletics year closed with 3 CCAA national championship medals in women's curling and badminton in a successful year that saw 10 of our 12 teams qualify for ACAC championships and playoffs. At the provincial level, Concordia's Thunder women's and men's soccer and the women's cross-country running teams all won ACAC bronze medals. I'm excited to share that Concordia was awarded the 2018 CCAA Badminton National Championships to be held right here on campus from February 28 to March 3, 2018. Concordia's badminton program is one of the strongest in the country, and we have a history of success at nationals. I think this might have informed the decision to hold the finals here. In response to feedback from the campus community and prioritizing the wellness of students, faculty and staff, Concordia and our Concordia Students Association partnered to dedicate funds towards renovations in our fitness centre. So when our students returned to campus this month, in September, they were pleased to see, I assume, additional and upgraded equipment, new paint and a sound system in our fitness centre. Our Learning Accommodations Services Office has never been busier. In 2016, the Learning Accommodations Services Office supported 135 students with self-identified disabilities. This fall, we are supporting approximately 190 students. We're seeing an increase each term in the number of students accessing supports through the LAS office. And while our grant increased this year from $41,000 to $87,000, the funding we have been provided with to assist this group of students still does not match the need or even come close. This month, we will launch a bold new commitment to the mental health and wellness of our Concordia community. Our mental health strategy contains 3 priorities for 2017-18. These are the creation of a peer support team, mental health first training for all interested faculty and staff, and a Movies for Mental Health event to facilitate discussions about wellness. We are taking strong action in this area. Sexual violence on campus has quite rightly received significant attention lately. Concordia is committed to creating a culture of respect and safety for all of our campus community members. 2 specific issues of focus are sexual violence and domestic violence. Concordia's Board of Governors approved our sexual violence policy and procedures in November of 2015, making Concordia the second post-secondary institution in Alberta to have such a policy. This policy sends a message that sexual violence is an issue of institutional importance and that Concordia recognises its role in regard to this issue. The instrumental value is that the policy's capacity for reducing and eliminating campus sexual violence and ensures the fair, confidential and dignified treatment of survivors. In 2016, Concordia became the first Canadian university to offer the Enhanced Access Acknowledge Act Sexual Assault Resistance Education Program, otherwise known as Flip the Script, much easier to say. Flip the Script is a 12-hour small group empirically based intervention designed specifically for university women. It is based on theory, research evidence and best practices for helping women resist acquaintance sexual assault. The policy and our programs are the key elements of Concordia's comprehensive strategy to address rape and other forms of sexual violence on campus. Now, at the end of 2011, Concordia's then president, Dr. Joel Crispin, and the Board of Governors decided to create an international profile for the institution. The current Vice President, International and Research, Dr. Manfred Zoik, was appointed to his position at that time, and I have him to thank for the information in this portion of the speech. Dr. Zoik, with the collaboration of his peers and some early champions amongst faculty and administration, embarked on a strategy of comprehensive internationalisation. This means not only recruiting international students to fill classrooms, but also establishing strong partnerships around the globe in order to enliven our institution and create opportunities for students, staff, and faculty. 5 years on, our focus is on deepening our relationship with those partners who are the strongest and most strategic for Concordia. Mutual visits by students, faculty, and staff are multiplying, enhancing everyone's global experience and contributing to mutual enrichment, which is academic, cultural, and personal. Over the past 2 academic years, we have welcomed 341 international students to Concordia, creating almost $4.5 million in revenue. In terms of student exchanges, although we've started off with a very weak general exchange balance ratio of 10 students coming in to 1 student going out overseas, we've developed a much more healthy ratio now of 3 students in to 1 going out. We'll continue to work on that. It would be great if all students spent a semester at one of our international partners. We're now signing agreements with international partners only if a strategic reason justifies it. At the same time, the International Office is reviewing our existing partnerships and is terminating those that are inactive. Over this past summer, our administration and the Research and International Office established the following regional priority areas for Concordia. Those are Brazil, especially the South, Europe, with some strategic sub-regions, and China, which is a strategic region and market for many countries and universities in the world. As a small institution, we believe that a focus on these 3 regions makes the best use of our limited resources. We can't do everything, so grouping our main internationalisation efforts regionally in this way would, it seems, make some sense, especially as we have had the most interest and engagement from institutions in these areas of the world. Study abroad, as I have mentioned, is a high priority for us, and awareness buildings and campaigns are being intensified. The international experience and global awareness are fundamental to Concordia's students' outcomes as responsible and leading citizens in Canada and the world. So I invite faculty and staff to embrace this point of view and contribute with enthusiasm to building this awareness amongst our students. We are educating well-rounded scholars with eyes open to the world. Turning now to research, it is notable that the number of available teaching credit hour releases for faculty tripled this past year, from 36 hours to 108 hours. It represents a shift in Concordia's culture, and we hope to see a marked increase in research publications as a result. Our current level of research production is good, and we hope that with enhancements, such as the additional teaching release time for research and our new Centre for Science, Research and Innovation, that this will only improve. Concordia is aiming to build on our traditional strength as a smaller university, combining teaching with quality, meaningful research. We value our connections to the community and industry in our research work, but most important of all, we value the academic freedom that our faculty have to pursue lines of inquiry in their areas of expertise, wherever they may lead. Now, in September of 2016, Concordia officially established the Centre for Innovation and Applied Research, the CIAR, under the Vice President of Research and International with a director and a manager. Innovative in itself for a Canadian university, let alone a small one, the CIAR is a real connection between Concordia, research initiatives, and community and industry. It is a university research and tech hub that harbours and supports student and faculty entrepreneurship, business incubation and startups, and will embark on international industry business acceleration based on models both in North and South America. To date, the CIAR has been involved with 45 applied research projects and initiatives, resulting in over $3.6 million of faculty-led grant submissions, CIAR CUE initiatives, and sponsored research opportunities. An exciting development that nobody who visits our campus can miss is the construction of our new Centre for Science, Research and Innovation, the CSRI, scheduled for completion in April of 2018. This will house our CIAR, the $15.9 million CSRI building, built with the help of $6.3 million in federal strategic infrastructure funds, will house research hubs in psychology, science, business incubation, and Indigenous knowledge. Many naming opportunities and other opportunities to assist us financially with this building and the work that will happen in it are available. I'll now move on to risks, and we face a number of risks this year and are doing our best to ensure that their impact is minimised or done away with altogether. The main risks, as I see them right now, fall into two categories. These are financial risks and student mental health risks. I've already mentioned our mental health strategy. This is in response to what, in my view, are breathtaking statistics regarding mental illness on campus. We must be proactive in this area. Thankfully, we've been able to raise some funds to support our initiatives, and we have generous donors to thank for that. Further, I was relieved at the beginning of August to receive notice from the Government of Alberta that we will be receiving $90,000 per year in targeted mental health funding. This will go some way towards allowing us to implement our strategy. Financially, as we look to the future, we are anticipating constraints in the 2018-19 financial year or academic year. The impact of this will either be compounded or alleviated somewhat by the outcome of the Government of Alberta's funding and tuition reviews. Given the state of the provincial economy, we can assume that the past 3 years of funding increases are not to be expected moving forward. Increases in student numbers and the tuition this generates have been helpful, but we also cannot depend on these increases every year. We have also seen an increase in our expenses. Further, Concordia's legacy defined benefit pension plan carries a very significant unfunded liability that we are seeking an exemption from paying. We need to find new ways to enhance our revenue stream, and this is not solely the job of administration. It's incumbent on our entire community to find new ways of increasing revenues in their areas. This goes beyond simply keeping the doors open and the lights on. Increased revenues directly improve the student experience. As we move into our next budgeting cycle for 2018-19, we'll be preparing 3 budgets. These are a worst-case scenario budget that anticipates a 5% budget cut, a likely case budget that anticipates a 2% funding cut, and a better case budget that anticipates a 0% funding increase. Once we find out what the situation really is, we can then apply the appropriate budget. An additional financial pressure is our new Centre for Science, Research and Innovation. The cost of the building, as I said, is $15.9 million, for which we've received a $6.3 million federal grant. However, being an independent academic institution rather than a public one means that we receive no provincial money towards its completion. Therefore, we need to find $9.6 million. I'm working hard with our team and expert consultants to try and raise these funds, but in this economy, it's not easy. Further, building the CSRI is only part of the expense we face. We then need to staff it and ensure that it's filled with the equipment that our researchers need in order to operate it. So although we face some risks, our future is undeniably bright. We have a number of opportunities in front of us, which will provide our focus for this academic year. Our Centre for Science, Research and Innovation is scheduled for completion at the end of April, and it will transform the way we work, bringing our research and teaching closer together and providing both students and faculty with opportunities for research that were simply not possible in the past. This year, we will focus on getting the building up and completed while planning for the long-term use of the space. We're also embarking on the development of a new 5-year academic plan. And this task will be collaborative and I hope enjoyable. We want to go about this differently, be creative both in how the plan is developed and how it is finally presented. Our ultimate aim is a robust, user-friendly plan that everyone can articulate and become engaged in as we implement it. And in view of our financial situation, we're going to be focusing on promoting greater efficiencies within the institution. Fewer resources on the horizon provide us with opportunities to examine the ways in which we work. For better or worse, each and every program and budget unit needs to examine how it can become more sustainable. And we'll be asked to do this as we approach the budget planning phase. I will say this, however much we may love program X or Y with very small numbers of students, these are not sustainable. So we must think about the sorts of programs that we offer here at Concordia, and we need to focus on what students want. We need to focus on their needs and serving them. Now, what has become known as the public-private issue also needs to be resolved. I've made no secret of the fact that I support Concordia becoming a public institution. In many ways, we already are. I believe our long-term financial stability and sustainability depends on it. However, the decision is not mine to make and rests on a successful negotiation between our board and the government of Alberta. Obviously, I'll play a role in these negotiations, but the outcome is far from certain, and at this point, and it ideally needs to be resolved this year. And I'm also working with our board and the City of Edmonton on potential opportunities for us over at the Northland site. I've put forward a brief outline of our interests in the site, which includes sporting facilities, transit, and space for residences and perhaps other new buildings in the future. Discussions with the city will continue throughout this year. Now, I've just provided a lot of information about the current status of Concordia, some of the risks we face, and where we'll be focusing our efforts over the next year. Overall, I can say Concordia is in a very good position. The student experience is strong, and our overall enrolment is increasing. We're making beneficial adjustments to our academic programs, turning our focus more towards outcomes and careers, and our services that support student life are, in my view, second to none. We are seeing an improving trend in our research and international work, and which will be further enhanced by the completion of our new Centre for Science, Research and Innovation this year. Our athletics program continues to make us proud. Our financial position is good overall, but we are vulnerable, and this area needs to be monitored and responded to as we face a more uncertain future. Now, as we navigate our way through this academic year, my commitment to you is that I'll continue to make decisions that are in the best interest of the institution as a whole. Concordia comes ahead of any individual or unit. And by Concordia, I mean mostly our students, without whom we do not exist. I hope that this is widely understood and that our entire community of board, administration, faculty, staff, students, and alumni approach the task of keeping Concordia strong in a charitable spirit of giving, gratitude, collegiality, collaboration, and always assuming the best of one another. I truly hope that we can make progress in furthering this sort of culture over the next year. And finally, this address can be found as of now on the Concordia homepage and on the main website. I'm happy now to take questions, and I thank you for your engagement and patience through this inaugural State of the University address this afternoon.
Thank you, Tim, for an incredibly informative and also amusing on occasion foray through our context in which we live and work here at Concordia, both internally but also thinking about that external context, which is a huge piece that perhaps isn't always present in our minds. As Tim said, we now are opening the floor to questions or any sort of feedback that anybody would like to share with the President. We do have two folks with microphones who will be coming down the aisles. If you can just flag it up, I will assist in moderating, and we have one immediately here to start us off.
Thank you, Dr. Lorman. I really enjoyed that board picture. I'm still chuckling about that. Dr. Lorman, you mentioned that earlier Concordia used to have some requirements for the students in order to sort of preserve a Concordia identity, and those are going to be jettisoned. Just really quickly, could you talk about what those requirements were and what's being cut, what's no longer being required for all students to take? Thank you.
Yes, yeah. Now, technically, they still apply now until we have the learning outcomes in place. But the Concordia Core, as it's called, was a response to a review that we had done by a company called Noel Levitz in 2012. And what that recommended was that Concordia develop a distinctive education, and that distinctive education would be a set of courses that all students would take so that when they graduated, they had the Concordia stamp of approval, so to speak, and were different to other sorts of students. It's a kind of an American approach. I mean, American liberal arts colleges typically have a core of that nature. In our case, I don't believe, and clearly General Faculty's Council agreed, don't believe that it did produce distinctive graduates, because our Concordia core was so convoluted. You had, I think, 5 areas in which you were to choose courses, and one of those areas, I think there were over 30 courses that you could take. So it really didn't produce any consistency in terms of the students graduating, in terms of what they learned. Really, I mean, aside from the fact that our programs are very strong, don't think was very helpful. It was certainly a nightmare for some students who got to the end of their program and realised they hadn't taken this particular course in the core and had to spend another semester or even a year at Concordia. I think, and the GFC clearly agrees, that it's a much better approach to have some outcomes, some things that as an institution we'd like to see students come away with, and then design our programming around that, rather than saying you must take course X, Y, but not course Z in combination with course B, those sorts of things. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
We have a question in the middle of the room. I'm not sure, Nikki or Lana, who can get to
You might have to throw that microphone, I think.
Could we get a student athlete to assist with the catching of the microphone?
So you mentioned earlier that Concordia will only now be making strategic international partnerships. Could you just elaborate on what kind of criteria you use to determine an appropriate international partner?
Yes. When we started our international program in 2012, I believe we had 1 international partner and 3 students here. So it was something of that very small. And we now have the numbers that I mentioned of the last 2 years, 340 something. What happened, though, in an effort for us to go from 0 to have a fairly decent international program, we ended up taking, and every university goes through this, you take a lot of partners, but you're not always sure which ones are actually going to result in concrete partnerships. So we have some partners, some international partners with which we've done nothing since 2012, but yet it continues to drain our resources in terms of servicing agreements and those sorts of things when there's no benefit for us and there's no benefit from them in the partnership. So what we did in the summer was we sat down as an administrative team, and we had a look at those universities with which we'd had the most interaction, students back and forth, faculty members back and forth, and what we found was that the 3 regions there were Brazil, China, and Europe. That doesn't preclude us having other partners, and I will just mention, we just signed a new partner in Australia, and the reason being, now Australia is nowhere near Europe. or Brazil or China. Closer to China, I suppose. But the reason we did that was because there's a lot of students who want to go to Australia. So it is good to have, it doesn't mean we're not going to have some other relationships where they make sense. But there has to be a reason such as that. We have student demand, right, to go abroad, and study abroad is one of our strategic priorities, right? So it has to fit in with those sorts of priorities. Promoting faculty international collaborations for research, those types of things, for even administrative partnerships with other universities. So it has to fit in with the objectives of our international program. It's going to be a much better approach. The other advantage is we can go to South Brazil and visit 8 partners at once, instead of going somewhere and visiting 1 or 2 to sort of service those agreements.
Other questions, comments for Tim?
I've answered everyone's questions. You can email me, president@concordia.ab.ca
I've got a
if you're
question.
too shy.
I've got a question for you.
Yes?
May I take the prerogative since I'm
Yes.
holding a microphone? I can.
This is going to be one of those horrible questions I'm not going to be able to answer now. I thought I'd made it through.
No, I think in the post-secondary sector, there's often at least a perception of a tension between teaching and research, right? You spoke a lot about, nurturing that student experience and ensuring that that is our focus. Can you talk a little bit about how supporting the research culture and the evolving research culture here at Concordia actually interacts with that student experience and is not really separate from it?
Yes.
If indeed that is your view.
Yeah. This is a thank you for answering that. This is an area that I think Concordia can really put a distinctive stamp on. Our new Centre for Science Research and Innovation, when you have a look at what we have planned to be in that building, all of it involves students and student research. And that is very different because we are largely undergraduate institution and we have great graduate programs, but the largest part of our student population is undergraduate, and often at universities, undergraduate students get minimal, not much opportunity to research. And what our new building here does is allows us to bring our undergraduate students and our graduate students more into research closely with faculty members throughout their undergraduate degree. There is a strong relationship between teaching and research, and at Concordia we've always known that. And people, it's a relationship that kind of feeds back and forth, right? Your research keeps you as a professor on the edge of your discipline, on the frontier of your discipline, if you like, is a term I've heard used. And so I think it's very important that we really encourage and enhance that research culture, not only for the sake of research, but for the sake of our teaching as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that was a puffball question, really.
It really was.
Any other questions or comments from the floor?
Well, thank you very much for coming. And yeah, it's been great.